many countries, in fact. To break all of this down, we'll bring in Border Security Caucus Chair and Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs for more on our southern border. Congressman, always good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on here. So many stories to follow here, and I want to discuss Title 42, a letter that you wrote to Congress. Two questions stuck out to us in this as we show the viewers. One, has the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, instituted additional vetting procedures for Russian nationals? Number two, how many Russian nationals has U.S. Customs and Border Protection encountered illegally entering the United States since January 2021? Please provide a breakdown by month. If you would just expand on a couple of these questions here and this letter that you sent and how important it is or how significant it is that Title 42 is being rescinded, sir.
Well, I received reports from Border Patrol agents as well as local law enforcement as well as local elected officials that what's happening on our border now is you have 140 plus countries came in last year, but we're seeing an influx of Russians and Eastern Europeans, and the reality is, since we are engaged in this war in Russia, even though we're not on the shooting side, we are involved. And just last weekend, I got calls saying there's more Russians coming through now. We need to know what's going on, what Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is doing with regard to Russian immigrants. Are these folks that are illegally entering the country? Where are they coming from? Do they have malevolent intentions? What is going on? And it's become very pressing right now as we see an increased number of Russians being apprehended at the border.
Yeah, this administration was actually questioned about this. Ron Klain, White House Chief of Staff, he continued to push the immigration issue back on Congress, not his administration, on Congress on ABC this week. Check this out.
Look, we need to do more work at the border. The president sent an immigration plan to Congress on his first day in office. We've asked consistently for more resources. We put in place a new rule that will take effect next month to enable us to process asylum claims more clearly.
As a member of Congress, how would you respond to that, sir?
I'd say that's out and out balderdash. I mean, here's the deal. When you go down to the border, I don't think Ron Klain's been down to the border. I've been down to the border dozens of times. And I talked to agents and folks who live there. I asked the agents, what do you need? Do you need more resources? Do you need more personnel? What is it? They all say they need they need the policy that was in place prior to Joe Biden. And Klain is right on one thing. The Biden administration changed all of those policies on day one. And that's why you've seen since day one of the Biden administration a record number of apprehensions, a record number of gotaways, a record number of unknown gotaways, a record number of drugs being brought across the border. That is what they have done. And now when he says we've got this new process, we're going to put this new rule in place, that is what he's saying is we're going to eliminate Title 42. That's the new policy they're putting in place. And Title 42 allowed for quick response and to prevent people from entering the country.
And that confuses Americans, to really put it bluntly, because, again, back to Title 42 is something that was put in place during the pandemic. So if you had a health issue, you could be sent back. And essentially it was a resource. It was a tool to expel those that had any public health emergencies or perhaps were coming over illegal with public health issues. So does that mean that the pandemic's over?
Well, I might think the pandemic's over. The real epidemic at the border is not over. And the way to think of this, Sean, is in March, half of the people that were apprehended at the border were turned away under Title 42. And so if you have 150 to 200,000 people that were apprehended, you send back 75,000 to 100. They never got in the country. And then the Biden administration released the rest of those people into the country, which is why we need to know how many are Russians. But the point is, when they enact their policy that rescinds Title 42, now you're going to have double the people coming into the country. They're going to ignore Title 8, and they're going to send these people all over the country, and that's going to be a pull factor. And now you're going to move from roughly 250,000 to 300,000 people a month coming in to somewhere north of 400,000 people coming in, and that's from leftists who are looking at this as well. It's between 400,000 and 500,000 people going to come across.
And you're not wrong. The Hill reporting this, and I'll show it to you. And when you talk about the left, Democrats fractured on response to end of Title 42. At this point, it's being reported on. And I'm just curious, when you're meeting with other lawmakers, is there a concern? Is it just Republicans? Do you see it on the across the aisle, sir?
Yeah, there are some Democrats from border states that are very concerned about this. I'm thinking of a couple in Texas that I've talked to. There's some in Arizona that are Democrats that are concerned. But once you get out of there, it's just people in swing districts that are concerned. But you actually have people that are pro-open border, and they don't care if 5 million people enter the country illegally under Joe Biden this year, which if this doubles like everybody thinks it's going to, that's roughly where you're going to get somewhere between 4 and 5 million people illegally entering the U.S. this year.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about this. So there are a few states that are suing the Biden administration over Title 42, one of those being your state of Arizona there. Have you spoke with AG Brnovich on this one? Do you see any, do you see an outcome to this lawsuit?
Yeah, I see a positive outcome, Sean. I mean, so I've had some contact with some of Brnovich's people, and he and I, when we're out in Arizona, we might run into each other and talk about some of this stuff. But the reality is I see a positive outcome because there is no authority for President Biden to just unilaterally come in there and stop this. That's going to be a contested issue, but what he's doing is they are abrogating the law, whether it's on Title 42, because it isn't just pandemic, it's triggered by CDC, but I mean, there are other communicable diseases that are being brought across the border into our country, not just COVID and COVID variants. And so I'm hopeful and optimistic, but, you know, I'm a realist as well, Sean. So we've got a long uphill battle against this administration because they want an open border.
And Congressman, something I brought up to you earlier is the pandemic over? And obviously this is being handled differently in different states, different cities. Specifically New York City, that made news recently. Toddlers 2 to 3 years old, according to Mayor Eric Adams, still have to mask up. Now that's why I say, is this still over? So if you're going to mask up toddlers 2 to 3 years old, clearly there must still be some public health concern. But obviously not there at the border if you're rescinding Title 42, which has to do with concerns over public health. Make it make sense.
Yeah, you can't make it make sense because the weird thing is Title 42 is triggered by CDC, the Center for Disease Control. The CDC still is basically mandating if you get on a plane, you got to wear a mask, even though the CDC has also said cloth masks don't work. So that's contradictory. But they're also saying if you're an American citizen traveling around, you got to wear a mask. If you're an illegal alien crossing our border, we're going to say there's no COVID issue anymore, no emergency anymore. What's even weirder about that is they're going to let these people cross our borders illegally, potentially having COVID, but when they get on the plane and being transported throughout the country, they're going to have to wear a mask. It's just crazy.
Yeah, just following the facts. That's all we're doing. Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, a border state who does have to deal with this issue here. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for taking the time on a Monday.